So now I would like to welcome our speaker, Michelle Smith, who is the best-selling author, sales expert, consultant, and speaker. Michelle actually opened her first company at 21 and in 5 years scaled it to billing over $10 million in annual commissions for over a decade. It was the largest and most successful sales organization ever built in Canadian history. She's conducted over 50,000 interviews, helped open over 100 companies, and spoken on stage over 5,000 times. That is truly amazing. She is founder of She the Mighty, an entrepreneurial community and educational empowerment system for women and girls, and has her fourth book, Mighty Leadership, coming out in bookstores next year. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Diana. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about pitching and storytelling, as it's a huge part of being an entrepreneur and being a business owner and a founder and a startup. At any point in your journey, you have to be prepared to pitch, and to do that really effectively. There's a big awareness today on how much story has an impact on the resonance that your pitch can have on people. So, quick slide. Diana's already covered the basics. I am a York University alum, and so I'm not sure how many of you are, but I was a Winters College resident during my first year at York, and made the typical rookie mistake of booking a class at 8 o'clock in the morning. I lived at Winters, and I booked a 8 a.m. class at Calumet College on Friday morning, the night after pub night. And so that's something that you only learn after your first year in school to not to do with your schedule. It was an incredibly far place to get to. There was no indoor tunnels. But I bring up that example because that's really what has an impact on almost anything that we do, right? The information that we understand and how to be able to navigate is based upon our experiences, and we learn those one at a time. I'm talking to you guys about sales because I've probably been told no more than anybody else in Canada, because of the amount of sales pitches and sales attempts that I've been engaged with in my lifetime. What that does, though, it gives you the ability to have specific information. I truly believe that sales success comes from really being able to tell the amazing truth. It has nothing to do with being great at manipulating facts or data. It has nothing to do with your ability to finesse a scenario. It has nothing to do with your ability to control or manipulate. None of those factors truly come in. Some people may leverage those for one-off unfortunate exchanges, but to have consistent and scalable success, it really comes down to something that is freeing, I find, for most people when we get into the sales discussion. And it does come down to the fact of telling the truth, which for me was a required part of being able to succeed in sales. I was terrified in the beginning. I was very shy when I was younger. I was not confident talking to people that I didn't know. And the idea of sales terrified me to no end. So getting into the field was an accident, and learning how to be successful in it came from understanding this particular freedom, which was being able to tell the truth with 1000% assurance is the way to be able to do incredibly well. We're going to be talking about pitching again tonight, and predominantly because it can be fairly intimidating. I'm curious to know how many of you guys are a little uncomfortable about the idea of sales, or quantify sales success with shady sales practices. I think everybody can have, examples that you can pull or cite of different salespeople that you've encountered that may not have been the most pure at heart. And unfortunately, that's something that just gets painted across the profession, right? It's no different than any other profession, that each player in the game is going to make their own choices, and they're going to choose to do it with their own set of methodologies. Sales can be intimidating until it no longer is, and it can be fairly confusing. And so it's our goal tonight to kind of demystify some of the layers in the process, to be able to see you leave here with a little bit more equipment on how to be able to succeed at navigating the different types of pitches. Sometimes we don't know which points to address, how to sell people on us, how to be confident, how to handle a nose. All of those things come up. I have a couple of slides that just show sort of the disparity when it comes to where funding is going. And because Ella is a organization that focuses on female entrepreneurs, I felt that it would be valuable because I feel there will be a percentage of them listening tonight. This is a reality. In 2020, venture capital funding for women went down to 2.4%. And that statistic is a little aggressive. I've seen, varying data points that are between 2% and 2.4%. That's down a full percentage from the year previous, which is, in part and parcel because of COVID, but again, it's trending in the wrong direction. You can Google and you can research and attempt to gain insight into how come and why. Why is there such a varying data point? And just for clarity, this is for women founders. So for companies that are women founders, 2.4% of VC funding came to them. 97.6% went to male founded companies. When it comes to founder groups that had at least one person in the founder group that was a woman, the percentage of funding increased to a total of 9%, which is still astonishingly low, which means that 91% of the venture capital funding in 2020 went exclusively to startups that are male founders, exclusively. And so that's interesting. And it tells us a few things. Some things that it tells us are that there is still some gender bias, and we're not going to focus on that tonight. There's a very large disparity when it comes to the number of people that are in venture capitalism that are male versus female, et cetera. What we're going to talk about is the things that we do have influence over and where we really need to be able to focus. So according to the experts, the other problem when it comes to investing in women, and again, I bring these points up because they have certain relevance for all of us in the way that we present, but they also will have relevance particularly to women. The problem to anyone who voices their opinion on this is that women doubt themselves, women lack confidence, and women give up after hearing the word no. And so I bring this up and I want to address this because as a female myself, I have a response when I see those expressions of the generalization of our gender. But as a sales trainer and as a sales team builder for over 25 years, I've also worked with hundreds and hundreds of people that are small business owners and worked with lots of founders on their pitches. Have worked with several people that have gone on to successfully get deals on Dragon's Den, etc. One of the biggest generalizations that I see in almost everyone that does pitch, but I see it almost 100% of the time when it comes to seeing females pitch, is that I do see some of these factors show up inside of their pitch, and it comes in specific places that we're going to address tonight. So some of the places that we have influence when it comes to women particularly is physically. The amount of space that we physically take up when we enter a boardroom. Often we'll see women, and if you start to pay attention to this, it's interesting just to be an observer of. Often women will walk into a boardroom and they will be interested in taking up as little space as possible. And that will be demonstrated by where they put their notes, where they put their briefcase, where they put their jacket, how they will, try to contain themselves with the least amount of real estate in the boardroom. It's a behavior that you typically don't see from men. Generally, you will see men come in and not be afraid to take up an additional chair. So it's just interesting to notice these are some of the behaviors that we tend to demonstrate based on gender and upraising. The way we physically posture ourselves, again, we take up less space. It's interesting to note that often women will have their shoulders a little bit more concave. They'll have their legs crossed. They'll have their hands on their lap. You'll tend to see men have more of a presence even when they sit down with their shoulders back. We're going to talk about that a little bit farther in the presentation as well. And then in other places with our language. And these things are key things to note. And again, you're going to get this presentation, so you'll be able to have access to all of these notes. But there are certain things in our language that will minimize our feeling of importance. Women tend to use the word just all the time, and that depreciates what they're about to say. Small little apologies. I'm sorry. I just need you for a quick sec. I have this small idea I've been thinking about. And we also use disclaimers. Maybe this isn't important or not. You've probably already thought of this. Those are language barriers that we have to reduce in order to ensure that we do not come off as less confident or less sure of ourselves. So again, we're going to talk about language a little bit farther on. Another area of influence is to stop sabotaging communication. This can be by being too emotional or using too many words or revealing too much information. And this can show up not only in the way that we verbally communicate, but it can also appear in our email correspondence, which is determining whether we get to the pitch or the follow-up after the pitch. And it can also be a detrimental factor in whether or not we win investment or we win the business or not. And another place, again, more so for women, is the way that we speak to ourselves. And depending upon what's being said inside of your own mind before you go into that pitch, while you're in the pitch, the dialogue that you have inside of your head has a massive impact on your ability to perform. The last part where it says that women don't like to negotiate, they back down after saying no. It's true that in large part, women more than men see negotiation as conflict, as opposed to a necessary part of any type of discussion. And so it's sort of about retraining your thought process about what that looks like and giving yourself permission to be able to have agency, to be able to debate, to be able to ask for what it is you're looking for, and to simply disassociate no from being a bad word. No simply means no. It does not mean to not continue or to not take another shot or another run at it. So negotiating is something that may be uncomfortable in the beginning. And this is, again, also for people that are not used to negotiating. This is not a female specific quality. I bring them up because they seem more prevalent in female gender, but they are certainly things that touch all of us. And so practice the things that we're going to talk about tonight every chance you get in order to be able to get better at negotiating. So tonight's goal is to simply give you the frameworks that you need so that you can feel certain about pitching and how that will also intertwine with your ability to be a great storyteller, and then to address some of the communication solutions that you'll need in order to impact your success. So tonight, this is the framework for the information we're going to cover. We're going to start off by going through the key elements of any pitch, regardless of what type of audience or what your outcome goal is. We're going to go through the very specific slides and topics that need to be in each different type of pitch deck. And then we're going to go through how to say what you have to say and talk more about those soft skills that are going to have a massive impact on your results, regardless of what your slides say or how pretty your graphics are. And then finally, just going through some really basic kind of housekeeping rules for presentations and being in the boardroom. So the key elements of any pitch. So regardless if you are pitching for investors, if you're pitching to one person, if you're pitching your product as a salesperson, these are the predominant broad strokes of what needs to happen and needs to be reviewed in any of those scenarios to take people through a proper purchasing journey. So just so that they're in large buckets, the first thing is an introduction. And you have to start with an attention-grabbing introduction. The very beginning of your pitch has got to connect immediately. It's got to get people's attention. It has to have them starting to think. I call it sort of the tap dance that people won't buy into or give you a chance and really start listening unless you've given them reason to pay more attention from the very beginning. And so introduction, regardless of what you're doing, is an important part of any type of pitch. The second is the problem. And the problem needs to be described in explicit clarity so that anyone listening can either relate to the problem, they can verify the problem, validate the problem, understand the problem, give importance to the problem, which now gives us cause to have to solve the problem. The next part is the solution, which is how do you solve the problem and how do you do so uniquely? And you can take this into as much detail or as quick and soft touch as you want to, but these are going to be, again, just the buckets of what the journey needs to be. The next part to the solution is why you. Why are you different? What makes your solution better, cheaper, faster. In branding, we call it, what is your est, fastest, greatest, cheapest? What is the reason why your solution is the best solution that they should pick? And also inside of this bucket is, why should they pick you and your team? Who are you? Why do you have exclusive skills or exclusive insight? What is it that you know that your competitors don't know? What have you gotten access to? What have you been able to synthesize? Have you been able to gain sight into? Why should you be the person that they decide to engage with? And this is also where they're going to make a connection based upon how you're presenting, whether they connect with you, whether they connect with where you're planning to go. All of that factors into bucket number 4. And then the final one, what's in it for them? And so why should people purchase your product? Why should people engage with your service? Or why should investors want to get involved with your particular endeavor? What's the outcome for them? What's the win? What are the benefits? What are the financials? So just in general terms, again, this is the 5 different components and elements to any pitch that you're going to go through. So next is just to define, what is a pitch deck? A presentation that's providing brief and informative overview of your business. And it's a tool to help you tell the story of your business. I put this slide in because I've seen too often when I'm working with founders that they use their pitch deck almost as their total lifeline, where their pitch deck is embedded with every word that they're planning to say. It has an incredibly immersive amount of data. It has an overwhelming amount of market evidence or market proof. It's extremely focused on the process that they are going through in order to create a solution. And it is overwhelming to the point that they lose the magic when it comes to the pitch. And so your pitch deck is only meant to be a facilitation tool. It's meant to come to the meeting with you or be part of the meeting with you in order to guide big concepts, large ideas, provide the data that you need them to see, and provide data that makes them feel a wow moment. You don't need a tremendous amount of data. You can use the specific statistics that when you read that one statistic, it's the jaw-dropping, mouth-opening wow point. And that particular point is enough because it makes the impression that you're looking for it to do. So a pitch deck is not the entire of the information. The entire of the information can be used in follow-up documents that you're going to leave behind after you have completed the pitch. And we're going to cover what type of documents that you can have at the ready for that as well. But when you go into looking at a pitch deck, I don't know how many of you guys have ever felt overwhelmed with the designing of a pitch deck, or you look at the slides and they seem to ask for a tremendous amount of information. The biggest thing I'm going to advocate for, this evening is to make it easy on yourself and to allow your pitch deck to provide what's required in a very intriguing and interesting way, and to alleviate the pressure of your pitch deck from having to close the business and get the money. It's not the goal, and it's not the goal of the pitch. That's not the goal of the meeting. The entire goal of the meeting is to simply keep them interested so that they want to see more from you. So you are the biggest part of your offering. Minimize that. You're the biggest part of your offering. When you're speaking to a potential investor, the biggest person that they're engaging or that they're gauging is you. They're looking to determine how confident you are. They're looking to see how organized you are. They want to understand how prepared you are, how well-versed you are in your market, in the competition, how easy you can answer questions, how clear you can be in the way that you communicate, how unafraid you are of having them ask questions. They're looking to see how well you do in a very short period of time. And they're making a determination on your ability to run and manage a company as a follow-up to what they've just witnessed as the way that you show up when you're pitching. So again, the biggest component to the pitch is the way that you show up and the way that you present yourself. The best news about that is that you have full influence over being able to do an excellent job. And it's a matter of following some of the regular components of the way to put together a pitch, and then working on the soft skills and practicing so that that way you communicate with intention, as opposed to having it get messed up, and feel as though you're making mistakes and saying things that you don't intend to. So regardless of anything else, the best statistic on your business plan, the most intriguing piece of data, if they don't like you, if they don't believe in you, if they don't feel as though you're worth the investment and you're somebody that they can trust, not only with their money, but with your own ability to navigate no's, then those are going to make a massive impact on whether or not they say yes to you. So you're your biggest asset, and that's something that you should feel really good about. And then one more point before we get into the construction of a pitch deck and the different types of pitch decks is the story that you're going to tell when you're telling your when you're going through your pitch is also your strategy. And I wanted to reference it and frame it that way because I feel as though it makes the storytelling component the most simplistic to understand, right? It's the reason, it's the truth behind why you do what you do. It's how your business idea emerged. It's the narrative behind your brand, and it will show up in your branding, in your marketing, in the way that you communicate on your website. It'll be evident in everything you do if your story is an authentic story. It needs to be an authentic story so that way it has deep meaning for you, and it's the truth, and it's something that can never be composed. I want to share with you really briefly. I have one person in my world that is a mentor to me out of a list of people that are mentors. And this one particular mentor is an insane guru. He's one of the best in the world at what he does. And I'm not going to bring up his name for reasons that will become obvious. But I have tremendous respect for this person. I have an incredible amount of admiration for this person. And I have learned an unquantifiable amount of business information from this person. Their influence over my career and my education is incredibly deep. So again, and tremendous respect. I attended one of their seminars, and when I was at their seminar, they started to tell their story, and this was a new story that I had not heard previously in any of the other exchanges or lessons or videos, etc. When they were telling their story, all of a sudden there was a part of their story that you could tell was being a little bit embellished for the sake of the storytelling of the story. And in that exact moment, I could feel that there was composition happening. They were composing for the first time. It wasn't just a true, authentic remembering and reiterating. It was a composition, and it was a composition for the sake of a marketing tactic, of a properly packaged story, of the power of storytelling. It was a sales injection into the seminar. The impact that it had on me was one that was extremely disappointing to just even witness that. And I say this because it was less than like 2 minutes long, but it's something I've never forgotten. And it's something that has stayed with me for the past 10 years. I still have tremendous respect for this person. I still have, an unbelievable amount of education that I continue to learn from them. But that one small point made such an impact because of their willingness to story tell. And I feel as though there's a lot of information and training that's available today that encourages the composition of a story. Figure out a story, develop characters, develop a pathway forward. In some cases, that's sound advice, depending upon what it is that you're pitching and what your model is. I'm going to advocate for tell the truth. Authentically uncover what is the story, and then use that story throughout your pitch. That's the most powerful type of storytelling that you will ever engage in. And the people receiving your story are able to tell if you're telling the truth or if you're spinning a tale. So there's 3 different pitches that you need to get great at. because no matter where you are in your business, again, you have to be ready to pitch. And so this is to help you kind of demystify the different pitch decks and make it simple so that when you have these three put together, then you are ready, and you should be ready at any time to be able to handle a pitch at a moment's notice. So the first one is when you're pitching the product. And this has a very different set of slides as a pitch deck, and it has a very different conversation than you will have when you're pitching investors. And so I call this your business pitch. This has different information. Investors are much more interested in finances. They're interested in marketing. They're interested in strategy. They're interested in the team, the depth of experience, etc. And then the final one is when you have 60 seconds or an elevator pitch and how to construct each one of these things. So we're going to go through the frameworks of how to do that. One key point before you get into each of the frameworks is for each person you're going to present to, or each group or each audience, you need to know who your audience is so that you have better information on how to get them excited. It takes a very little amount of research. You can get it done in less than 30 minutes, in my experience, to give you just much more accurate insight into who it is you're talking to. What are the commonalities behind the people that are coming to the presentation? What are the different concerns that they may have? Finding out who they are, what their roles are, and how they can impact their ability to say yes gives you, it's almost like putting rocket fuel in your ability to pitch more accurately and to incite the kind of response that you're looking to incite. And one point that's interesting and important to note is that the audience size barely matters. I hear people, and I get a ton of questions from people that ask me how to adjust their pitch based upon who they're going to be talking to. And often there's a misconception that if you're speaking to a small boardroom filled with people, that it's going to be vastly different than if you're in front of a massive audience versus if you're doing this online or if you're having a one-on-one meeting. And truly, it barely matters. You can have certain benefits if you have a large audience and you know how to be able to elicit support from the audience, where you can help enforce your validation of the value of your product. And you can play on some of that with a larger audience size. But beyond that scope, really and truly, the information and the certainty behind what you're going to deliver is going to remain vastly the same. So here's a short list of the slides to include in a product pitch deck. And you can Google today and get, 52 different lists of the most important slides. And all of them are going to be valuable to look at and to model, a pitch after. I've chosen to insert these slides because I also feel as though this particular order of slides helps you when it comes to the storytelling component and the storytelling aspect of getting people intrigued and interested in what it is that you're doing. So they're very, very basic slides. The cover, a killer opening quote, whether that happens to be on the cover or whether it happens to be just inside the cover, I think is a very interesting tool. The solution that you're looking to provide, and then the problem that you're looking to solve. And I like this order because, again, of the storytelling component, when you can finally move towards market validation and get people intrigued and interested in why they should be purchasing your product because of the solution that it provides. And we're going to go through a pitch deck example so that you can see this in real time. After the market validation, which is simply confirming that there is market share looking for this product, there's competitors in the market, there are people that are purchasing other things for solutions, so it's quantifying dollars that are already being spent. Then to talk about the future and what the future looks like, what the mission is of your company, your business, what you're looking to achieve. Then you get into the details and the product description, product features, a slide on pricing, again, user validation or referrals, and then final slide for contact or management team. Now, this is a very concise list. So if you were to use the shortest pitch deck, this would be my recommendation for these 11 slides to use. You can go into much more detail or have multiple slides in order to reiterate some of these different expressions as much as you want to, and there's no wrong answer to it. Using it in this flow is going to be a powerful way to be able to go through a powerful product pitch deck and cover this with the prospects that you're speaking to. So we're going to see a sample pitch deck, which is actually a real pitch deck that this company used. It's an incredibly successful pitch deck, and I'm going to fly through these slides so that we don't spend a ton of time on them. Again, you're going to have access to this later, but I just want you to see how storytelling and the way that this feels as we go through the slides in the order in which they were listed on the previous page. So as an example, so a fantastic quote at the very beginning. We now live in a subscription economy where we're seeing a shift from products to relationships. The way people buy has changed for good, and we have new expectations, right? This is talking about the solution. It's a global phenomenon. Customers are demanding new consumption models. People are moving away from traditional ownership. 80% of people dealing with business subscription issues. So again, the problem and market validation. Every industry is shifting. More market validation. Best companies have reinvented themselves away from products. More market validation. Now, who has survived? More market validation. Using really, really powerful references. And now talking about the vision. What does the new world look like? And then getting into product description. They don't get into too much of product features or product description. And then this is where you get into pricing, more validation, user validation. User validation, and then contact. And so for how many of you guys, is that a very different pitch deck than what you're used to seeing? How many of you, was that much less words and more graphics? It was more simplified. So I'm going to go into the next example. And this is to include in an investment pitch deck. An investment pitch deck obviously is when you're looking to raise funds. You're looking to earn money and ask people to invest in your company. And these pitch decks are much more, again, interested in the specifics of the business, the data, the financials, all of the percentages, as much information as you can provide in a concise fashion. So again, these are the slides to include in a investment pitch deck at minimum, and you can go into depth as much as you want to on these slides, but these need to be in extreme clarity so that they can see exactly what it is that you bring to the market, that they need to be a part of, and that they can't miss out on. This is also slightly different from some of the ones that you'll search and find. Lots of them start off with the traditional, what's the problem, what's the solution, and those are the first couple of slides. This is a slightly different way of putting the information together. but it also gives you the storytelling aspect to it, and it allows you to be a part of the conversation that really shows what the future is. So the vision and value proposition, this is starting off with something extremely bold, like we are the new Uber for pets. We are teleportation is the future of travel. It's what you're doing and what the value is going to bring to people, or the customers or consumers or the experiences, who are going to be using it. You identify the problem, you identify the target market, who is this going to be perfect for, and what the opportunity is as far as from an investment perspective. How much of that market is still available to access, and put in statistics that are going to show them even a segment of that market and what does that market look like. And we're going to go through an example again in a slide deck that will show you some of this data. What exactly is the solution? Then get into the revenue and the business model in as simplified terms as possible. Again, not to get very, very, deep into the non-important data, and to really stick to the important pieces that you need to move through. What does the financial model look like? And then milestones and runway. What has happened? What have you already accomplished? And what does the future look like? And this is going to show them certain things that you've been able to achieve already. It's certain celebration points. Those are incredibly important to be able to identify. And then what does the future look like? And that shows that you have spent a ton of time to identify what your next steps are, and how to quantify what your targets are going to be and what kind of timelines it's going to take to get there. Marketing and sales strategy is another really important component to address. This is your go-to-market plan. It's the different sales avenues and the different channels that you're going to light up in order to create the result that you're looking for. And these are things that need to be extremely well articulated and well thought out, well researched, and to have evidence as part of the marketing and sales strategy in order for investors to feel safe that this isn't something that you're just coming up with and composing or kind of throwing things at the slide deck. Who the management team is, and in this scenario, the management team, it's really important to be able to review their experience. It's important to investors to see what kind of credentials people have, what qualifications they have, the previous accomplishments they've had, the wins they have, any type of benefit, any type of credential that you can highlight is something that's going to make a difference. These are the people that we are saying are going to hit a home run as far as taking this business from where it is and scaling it to where it is going to be. And the management team is the exclusive group that's going to be, predominantly in charge of getting that done. So this is not the same as a product management team overview, a product overview. You can use cutesy names like this is the hustler, this is the, this is the creative. I'm not doing a great job of coming up with them on the spot, but I know you understand my point. You can still use those names when you're looking at, putting the name underneath the pictures, but you also have to have their credentials. You've got to have their backgrounds, etc. And that's something that's extremely important and not to overview lightly. Financials, now we're talking about more complex financials. We're talking about being able to take a look at exactly where the company is. On a pitch deck, you're still going to give it as a broad type of overview. You're going to use the most important information, but you have to have that backup documentation ready to go so that way, after you've done the pitch, you can provide more comprehensive financials so that they have something to look at that's going to give them the information that they're looking for. A competitive analysis, it's slightly different than the product deck as well. A competitive analysis is also talking about money and what type of percentage of the market that you determine you'll be able to acquire, and also to provide some advice on that. And then the final one is, what is the investment that you're looking for? You need to ask for the money, and what are you going to do with the money? where are those funds going to go? And this is another important point so that they can see that you're wisely spending based upon your research, your investment in this process, and it's not a wild guess. So those are the slides. And now we're going to take a look at Airbnb. I'm sure everybody on here has heard of Airbnb. This is Airbnb's actual original pitch deck that they used in order to go after investment when they were pitching. So this is the first slide. Problem. So price is an important concern for customers booking travel online. Hotels leave you disconnected from the city and its culture, and no easy way exists to book a room with a local or become a host. Solution. A web platform where users can rent out their space to host travelers as well. Save money when traveling and make money when hosting, and share culture by making a local connection to the city. Solution. Now some great statistics, market validation. Couchsurfing.com has 670,000 total users. Craigslist, 17,000 temporary housing listings in San Francisco and New York City from July the 7th to July the 16th in 1 week. Market size. So $2 billion available from trips booked worldwide, 560 million through budget booking and through online. 84 million is only a 15% share of the market. This is what the product looks like. And they're showing screenshots, so experiences, what they have available for people to purchase, how you can review listings and see what other people have thought about the stay, how to go through the booking process and the simplicity of the website, what it looks like, how attractive it is, how easy it looks to navigate for people that are experiencing the site, and the business model. They take a 10% commission on every transaction, $84 million. They're going after 15% of the market. $25 is an average fee. So that's $80 a night for 3 nights. How are they going to adopt and target the market? Through events, through partnerships, and through Craigslist.
So Michelle, we have, sorry to interrupt, we have a question in the chat from Tamara.
Okay.
So she's just wondering, how do we find the pitches, and are they available online?
Yes. So actually, I don't know if you can search them online and access to them. I'm going to send you this, or Diana will send you this slide deck, which has their entire, all of the slides that you're seeing. So you'll be able to receive that. So I've included their entire slide deck as part of this. I access them through a slide deck software program that I subscribe to, which I advise everybody to do. And so there are a variety of them that you can access. They make it incredibly easy for you to be able to build presentations and to have presentations that look great. I don't know about you, but I am not a graphic designer at all. And part of the challenge that I used to encounter years ago was creating presentations that I felt confident in the way that they looked. You know, I didn't like the fact that the picture was, you know, different size on each page, how to be able to set up the templates to look great. Maybe this isn't a challenge for many of you. And in today's world, it's certainly much less of a challenge. But that was something that was a very big challenge for me. So I am a subscriber to a software developer list, which if any of you guys do any of your own tech, I strongly advise that you subscribe to this list. It is a subscription called AppSumo. It's AppSumo, and I can put that in the link, or we can talk about that more at the end. What they do is they send deals to you so that you can see which softwares are actually going through this exact same process. They're created by tech founders. They are shopped out when they're in beta test. And as a person who's on the subscriber list, I get pushed all of the opportunities to become part of that beta test. And they're often unbelievably incredible deals where you would generally pay a subscription fee to a software that could range in the hundreds of dollars a month. But if you get in at the beta test and you're interested in trying out the software, then you can often get a lifetime subscription for less than $50. So I've purchased over 100 of these deals, I would say, in the past 6 or 7 years, and they have completely changed my ability to navigate as an entrepreneur and who I need to hire things out to and what I can simply do on my own, which is cost effective. It's also incredibly beneficial when you are contracting it out and you can articulate and dialogue about how long it takes to do certain things. So I know that's kind of a sidebar, but I highly advise using a different slide software. Again, there's tons out there. And when we get to the end, I'll share with you guys this one. And that's where these decks are housed, as well as a tremendous amount of other decks, which I think are phenomenal to use as examples. The original Facebook deck is in there, where they are the original Facebook deck when they were pitching Facebook as it was still called the Facebook, and they were pitching it predominantly to people to become users, but then they were pitching it for the first time to try to get advertising. And so it has the data from 2004 and the number of users and the number of impressions and what their plan was in order to roll it out to different Ivy League schools, and why college students are distracted and they spend more time looking at faces. So it's fascinating. And again, I'm grateful for that question. I think it's really important to see as many other examples as you can, and they're available on some of these slide sharing platforms. And so again, I think that's a phenomenal resource. And Diana, I'm not watching the chat when I'm looking at this, so I don't know.
Yep, I actually put that link in the chat, appsumo.com for everyone.
Okay, amazing. Okay. And so, so actually the software, I'm not going to bring it up right now. I just don't want anybody to get distracted. I want us to keep going on the, on this presentation, and then we'll circle back around to the software at the end, if that's all right. Okay, so we were at the go-to-market plan. How are we going to get this out? Now, the next slide is competition. So I love this graphic because it's an incredibly simple graphic that you can fill when you're doing something like this, that shows a lot with very little information on the screen. And so it's showing a quadrant of affordable versus expensive, and offline transactions versus online transactions, how to book travel for this specific case with Airbnb. So Airbnb is the affordable online transactions solution in this space. And they didn't include the competitive analysis of who would be the affordable offline transaction. We can all imagine whatever, motel chain you would like to embed into this section. The expensive offline transactions, again, we can put in, some of the best hotels, the Westin in Toronto, or, the Ritz, etc. What are the expensive online transactions? And this isn't my wheelhouse, so I don't know who that would be. But I love that you can see in one screen what the difference is between some of the most well-known brands that they're going to measure themselves against, and why they stand out against the Westin hotels or the Ritz hotels, the really well-known Super 8 chain, etc. All successful businesses, they just know which audience they're catering to. And I think it's an incredibly insightful one because it also includes online and offline. And we are still at a time where a large cross-section of the population they still do business offline. I mean, granted, it's getting smaller, it's the older generations, versus online, and online transacting is the first language of 3-year-olds today. But at the moment, there is still quantitative value for both of those audiences, and knowing who you're competing with in both of those silos is really important information. And it's important for investors to see that you have sight into that. So that's another reason why I love this slide. What is the competitive advantage? So they're the first transaction-based temporary housing site. Airbnb was the first of its kind. There's host incentives, so they can make money. This is a differentiator as to what's going to make this a viral type of consumer response. Not only does this have the benefit to the people booking and the simplicity of that, but this is almost like, I call this a Trojan horse. This is the Trojan horse of this presentation. It's the secret, extra special, really, really minimally promoted, incredible bonus that smart investors are going to hear and understand how this is going to make it contagious as a host to want to market and spread this on their own, because it becomes a money-making vehicle for the average person in today's world. And who does not want to have a side hustle of some kind? The percentage of the population that's looking for a little bit more money and how to be able to capitalize on any assets that they have to do so is, a massive percentage of the population. So I love the slightness of this suggestion and how interesting it changes your perspective when you're reading this slide deck. Ease of use. So again, something that's really competitive. It's very simple to use. We saw the slides and the screenshots, and then profiles. So you can browse host profiles, which means that there's some safety and security, and you can book in just 3 clicks. Then who's the team? And on this slide, we're going to see much more information. So each of the team members, right? This doesn't say, as our last slide deck does, and you'll be able to obviously go back and reference that if you're looking at the recording or looking at this deck after the presentation. The first slide deck had this person was defined as the hustler, then this person was defined as the hipster, and so they were cheekier, more on-trend type of younger, youthful titles. On this investor deck, we don't see any of that. So this is his level of expertise. He's going to be the problem solving when it comes to user interface and PR. And then these are his credentials for why he is the perfect person to be able to do that. A very impressive background, very impressive qualifications and education. Same with business development and brand. And so they're breaking out again the different components, which also shows their understanding of what they need to be excellent at in order to make this a successful business. It's not just one thing. It's not a generalized thing. It actually breaks out the solution silos and troubleshooting chiefs in charge for when they encounter issues in the future. And again, it includes all of his credentials. And again, finally, developer, and the same thing, shows all of the fantastic background and detailed credentials. Nothing that is just projection or conjecture. It's all true qualifications. Now we get into user validation. Some of them quotes that are really funny, a lot less crappy. A cooler alternative to a boring evening in a hotel room, right? Very interesting, because these are also very thought-provoking and a fun approach to couch surfing. So really, really great user validation, more user validation and testimonials, easy to use and made me money. Freaking rocks. It's about the ideas, the interactions, the people. You don't get that in a hotel room. So again, really, really great slides up till now. Financial, here's finally the ask. This is what we're asking for. We're looking for 12 months financing to reach 80,000 transactions on Airbnb. That trades into 2 million in revenue over 12 months. The other thing I want you to notice is what's not on this slide. What's not on this slide is everything that they're going to get. What's not on this slide is everything in the financial conversation. Those are things that are provided in the documents that you leave after. They're things that you may speak about, they're things that you may talk about, but they're not all on the screen, so that way you can have them looking at what it is that's the most important for them to look at, right? Slides also are incredibly important when it comes to understanding the way that we receive information. And so just to go over for a second, when when you're covering a specific point, it's really important for you to have a visual for people to be able to look at. For anybody who's ever presented in front of people or has ever done public speaking, this is something that you've hopefully been taught, that people need somewhere for their eyes to go. And our eyes are, they're computation machines. They are consistently reading and ingesting and looking for information. I don't know how many of you remember the movie Short Circuit. Short Circuit is a movie from, I don't even know, the 80s, but it just strikes me, it was this robot and he was constantly looking for input. He was so thirsty for understanding and knowledge. And our eyes do that. That's their job. Their job is to look for things to consume and read. And you know that it's validated for me if you think about the last time that you were in an elevator, or anytime you're in an elevator and you're standing in the elevator and you look at what's in front of you, and perhaps there's a screen that has a message on it. And so you read the message, and then you read the elevator capacity message, and then you look away. And then 2 seconds later, you look back and you read the elevator capacity message again, and then you look away. And then you look at it again, and then you look away. You know, these are the things that our eyes are seeking, right? It's a natural thing for our eyes to do so that they do their job. So it's very powerful to put on a slide the things that you want someone to look at and see, because they're going to read or reread these slides over and over again. And, you know, some, again, the ones that are the benefits, the ways that these were put together, they're going to read and reread those over and over again, and it's going to have an impact to them. So while you verbally articulate some of the bigger details, make sure that what's on your slide is something that's going to be sending the messaging that you really want them to absorb. Okay, and so this is the final one. So I'm going to go over the elements to the elevator pitch, and then we're going to take the quick 5-minute break. This won't take us long to get through. So the elevator pitch, this is the final framework that I want you to have as a takeaway in order to help you create your 3 different styles of pitches so that you're ready. And an elevator pitch, it is something that is referenced as, you know, what you would say if you were stuck in an elevator. This is kind of the old way that it was expressed. What really, you think of an elevator pitch as like your 60 seconds with someone. And it's the 60 seconds you get with someone at any time. You never know when it's going to happen. And it is the way that you explain your business and what you do. And to think about it in the simplistic, most simplistic form is to use this sentence, which may look confusing at the first glance. And it's to fill in the blanks of your company name or we, right? This is prompted generally when somebody says, "What do you do?" Or you're in a conversation and finally it's time for you to explain to people, you know, something about your business. Your company name or we do, or whatever's correct. You know, my company does, creates, makes, provides, whatever the right adjective is for you, X, which is your products or services, for Y, who is your target audience, so that Z, the solution. So I didn't prepare an example, but let's just say Teleport Me, my company, makes teleportation available for anyone, because who doesn't teleport, for anyone, so that they can travel and not have to and not have to deal with all of the challenges of traveling physically, you know, as traditional traveling methods force us to. Terrible example, but you get the point. So it's to work and challenge yourself to be able to fill in the blanks on this sentence so that you can say in one sentence, my company does this for these people so that they can, whatever the solution is, whatever the benefit is, whatever the life-changing outcome is. And this is this is the beginning of your elevator pitch. The other thing to make sure that you're prepared with is to have a 1-sentence answer to each of these different points. What's the problem that you're solving? What's your solution in summary form in 1 sentence? What's the target market that you go after? And I know that people tend to have a challenge with this. I just did a terrible job and said for everyone here, your target market really is important for you to know who is the ultimate. If you could only have one customer, then what is that customer? Who is that customer? Who would find the most benefit from what it is that you have to offer? And what does that target market description look like? Know what the market opportunity is, what type of competition exists, what are the needs that are still out there, where are the vacancies in the market, where is there nobody else doing something in this particular way. Know your competition and what they're charging, be incredibly versed on those things. Promote your team and be able to talk about who the people are that you have on your team so that you can be impressive when you explain who it is that you're working with, and how to summarize your financials, or what's the ask if you're asked. And this may sound like a crazy idea to do, but preparation is something that you'll never regret when you're in that moment. And so again, an elevator pitch is the third type of pitch for you to work on and have prepared, so that way, whenever you're in a situation and somebody asks you a question, you never have that moment where you start to stumble, or you stutter, or you sound unsure, or you sound like you're still trying to figure out the answer to the question yourself. And I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but I see it happen all the time. It's one of the biggest challenges I see when I'm working with founders and I challenge them to answer the question to me very quickly. We start to kind of go into spin mode, and we start to explain too long, and then we need a little bit more time to kind of really get into it. And if that's the case, you're going to lose your audience more times than not. To be able to have a very brief and distinct elevator pitch that allows you to answer these questions, to give them the one sentence at the beginning, is going to allow you to give people the ability to be interested in wanting to find out more. And again, just one point of review on all of those, for all of these different pitch frameworks, the goal is not to get the business immediately. It's not to get the money. It's not to get a yes. It's not to walk away with a sale. The goal is to not screw it up. The goal is to not move into the no pile. The goal is to have them want to learn more about you and to be intrigued and be interested. It's not to turn them off or to make them want to move on to somebody else because you didn't present yourself confidently, with assurance or with intelligence behind what it is that you're doing.
One comes from Tamara. How do you protect yourself from not oversharing in an elevator pitch?
Well, from my advice would be to practice, meaning that I find that people overshare when they are unprepared. And so that's when they start to explain, and then they explain it a separate way, and they end up stating too much because they're attempting to gain, authority or buy-in by giving too much information. So if you go back to the slide and you simply force yourself, and it's not easy. Like I'm going to tell you this, it's not easy. When I started to go through that exercise, I learned that, 12 or 13 years ago, from a business seminar, using that elevator pitch statement. It took, I'm going to say, hours for me to draft it over and over and over again. And, it's still something that I will pivot with today for different brands that I work on. So I think that's part of it, is to keep your elevator pitch relevant. It's something that's always sort of in evolution. But that would be my advice, is to really go back to using those frameworks and force yourself to answer those questions so that you've got a one sentence answer, or as close to one sentence as you can get, so that way you share what you want to share. And then it's up to you to decide, right? Because there's no rule book, right? You get to make the decision and give yourself permission to share more if you feel the need to. My experience has taught me to gauge someone's interest. And if they're interested, and we're in a great conversation, then it's simply to ask, when could we, have another discussion about this? Or, do you have time to sit down and maybe talk about this more in depth, and gauge an appetite, right? I don't like having an elevator pitch simply leave the elevator and then stand in the lobby And, you feel like it's going well until they cut you off and then they're gone, because now you've completely lost them. So I instead, well, most of the time that, you've probably completely lost them. They've gotten what they wanted, then they're kind of interested, and then they walk away. I prefer to leave it before that happens. So, I'm going to share what I've prepared and what I know how to say based on that framework. And if they're still interested in asking questions, then I'm going to ask them a question and say, I'd love to take the time to explain, and I'd love to talk to you about this. When would be a good time that we can set up 15 minutes or, 30 minutes to be able to sit down, and I would love to go into detail and give you all that information. I find that sets it up so that they are more intrigued, they're going to be more interested, and you again don't become the person that's on the end where you don't have influence over when this is going to, when this is going to finish. And I find that you also become too hopeful, right? Like, oh my gosh, he's interested. And I feel like we lose momentum when it comes to the power in delivering information and just the natural way that a sales conversation goes when people don't get everything they want from you in that 1 second. So I think if you're being asked a direct question, it's fairly smart to answer it. But again, if you've done the exercises and you know how to answer the questions that we've outlined, you won't be giving away too much information because you've designed your answers specifically not to do that.
Great question. Next one is, are NDAs a critical component of product and investor pitches?
So that is a great question. My answer to that question is going to be no. And, NDAs are put in place in order to protect you from, intellectual property that you don't want people to gain access to, or that you don't want to have become public. One of the biggest challenges when you're in the startup world is that you often, find it difficult to get people interested in what it is that you're doing without revealing the secrets of what you're doing. And really what the strategy is that you can tell people the solution that you are working towards, the problem that you're looking to eradicate, but you never outline specifically for them the what it is that you're building, the how it is that you're defeating it. You don't give them those details. What you're talking about is you're talking about the problem, you're talking about the outcome, the solution that you are looking to achieve, but you leave out of it the how, right? That's why most of those slides that you saw and most of the things that we've talked about, they haven't focused on the process. And the process is really, that's what your magic is. It's only when you get to the point where you're going to be revealing to people what these are that then I believe an NDA is an important legal document to have. But I would say that in, more than 95% of the cases, it's not necessary. And it's just important that you don't go into your pitch with the intention of revealing your intellectual property of the exactly how we do what we do, right? Like the colonel still hasn't told us what his 11 herbs and spices are, but we all buy his chicken, right? So I don't think it's something that's necessary at all for you to be worried about. Just don't walk in and, show them the one thing that they could steal from you. And focus on the problem, focus on the solution, and get them intrigued on how you do it. But like the underlying magic, it's something that you don't necessarily ever truly reveal until it's protected. Yeah.
Perfect. Some really great questions in the chat. But that's all I see so far. So I think we can resume.
Okay. So now, let me go back to sharing my screen.
Oh, sorry. One more question. Are these methods effective for food as well?
They're effective for anything. So it doesn't matter what it is that you're selling. These are the general components of information that are required for people to make a purchasing decision. The same business plan will exist regardless of what that product is. If it's food, then it's the same as if it's glassware. If it is a SaaS product, whatever the product happens to be, it's irrelevant. Your competitive analysis is going to be dependent upon your industry. Your research and data is going to be industry specific. But again, these are general slide decks that you need to go through and the pieces of information that people are going to want to know, regardless of what it happens to be that you're selling. Okay, so now we're going to move into some of the soft skills and how to say what you have to say. And I've put these here because I know that they are sort of offensive. That these are some of the strong beliefs that exist. And again, this presentation isn't catered specifically to women, but for the women that are listening and who saw the statistics at the beginning, that so few founders get funded. And these are predominantly the reasons that are explained as to why. These are the things that are important to have on your radar to work on. And they're things that will help you in any capacity and you know, in any area of your life. So the judgments that women doubt themselves, women lack confidence, and women give up after a no are generally things that we can work on when we talk about people skills and working on the way that we present ourselves to others. So why I can't access the bottom. There we go. So I want to talk a little bit about confidence for a second, because this is something that we hear talked about all the time. When people are explaining why they feel that they went with one company versus another, it is the exact cited example in, I couldn't find the statistic, but it was something like over 85% of the time that a woman founder was pitching, what was in the reasoning behind why venture capitalists said that they didn't select her, over 85% of the time, they referenced that they didn't know why, but for some reason, they just didn't think that she was confident enough. And so when it comes to communication, there are certain things, we've covered a few already, that we can do that will express that to others, whether it's intentional or unintentional. It's paramount to be able to get this into your site so that you can influence the way that you communicate, again, with intention. Before we move to that, though, just the concept of confidence, I think, is something that's fairly interesting as a concept. I hear people talk about confidence and why some people have it and other people don't. You know, experienced over the past 25 years, and again, working with thousands of people on varying degrees of pitching, public speaking, sales, etc. Confidence comes up as a discussion point, I'm going to say 99% of the time, because people have it in different circumstances and they are aware that sometimes it seems to be more elusive. Confidence, I think, is really interestingly packaged. I think that it has a really good PR team, you know, that talk about that confidence is something that you either have or you don't, or that you need to generate or not. I disagree with that philosophically, wholeheartedly. So I'd like to present a different way of looking at confidence that may change the way that you have a relationship with where you see you do feel confident and where you see you don't necessarily feel so confident. So I don't believe that confidence is something that we are limited from, you know, that we have a limited amount of. I believe that all of us have an incredibly high capacity of confidence. It's what we choose to direct our confidence in that is the issue. So it's not a commodity that we need to acquire. It's not something that we need to conjure or create that hasn't been there before. It's a redirection of what already is. Meaning, perhaps we have more confidence in the fact that we're going to screw it up than we have in the fact that we're going to hit a home run. We have more confidence in the fact that we're going to lose our place and feel embarrassed when we're presenting, versus our confidence in the fact that we're going to get through our presentation without even thinking about it, because we know what we're talking about and we believe in what we're doing. And so I'd like to, you know, put that new way of looking at confidence out there. And then I also think that it's really important to consider a different alternative to having the aspiration be to be confident, because confidence is something else that I also see generally associated with the fake it till you make it, you know, ideology, the, you know, trying to act as if, and where I do believe that those things, again, have value in certain circumstances, perhaps, and have, you know, served some people well. I disagree with both. I disagree with the fake it till you make it. I believe in, fix it and then make it, right? This isn't about posturing something, and particularly for your business. And if you feel a little bit nervousness, number one, that's normal. It takes a tremendous amount of practice to be able to feel comfortable in, negotiations and sales conversations, and even more so when you're presenting in front of groups of people. It's the number one fear that people have, and people associate public speaking with any time they have to stand up and say something out loud. Maybe that channels back to when we had to read in public and we were, 7 years old. I don't know, but it's a truism. It exists for all of us. What I would instead offer up as the goal, it's not confidence. I would offer up that the goal should be certainty. And for me, that's a really powerful distinction, because there is a chasm of space between confidence and certainty. And I want you to think for a moment about how dangerous you are when you're certain about something and you're in a debate with someone else who's telling you that you're wrong. Maybe it's your spouse, your best friend. When you are certain, to what degree are you prepared to advocate for the fact that you know what you're talking about? And we all have an experience that we can refer that to. We do. We feel at a completely different level of authority. And so I don't believe that the goal should be confidence. The goal absolutely should be certainty. And you generate certainty by doing your due diligence, by running a business and opening a business that fills a need, by doing your market analysis so that you understand the landscape better than anybody else in your field, ever, anywhere. And that's something that you have access to today, particularly because we have this new, invention called Google. That you can do a competitive analysis. You can see exactly how you are better positioned than anybody else for your customers or for investors, and the opportunity that they're going to have by partnering with you because of your understanding of the competitive analysis and how valuable you're going to be to customers and consumers. It's not about creating something. It's not about posturing. It's not about creating a solution for a problem that doesn't exist and then trying to make up this problem. It's about truly being certain about the fact that you have something of value. Your value proposition is something that's incredibly powerful, and it's something that you have no problem articulating. That has you in a completely different headspace, in a completely different mindset, and a completely different belief platform. And those are the things that can drive everything else and take all of the uneasiness out of the equation. So these things are also in a relationship with why we have a fear of hearing the word no, right? One of the most common fears that exists is the fear of rejection. And it's the reason that people will not do an ask or, have a bid with someone, because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them. We used to make no the goal. When I first started in sales and when I was learning how to be able to overcome my incompetencies with different types of people. I liked the people that were really nice. I really liked pitching granddads. But I had a fear with so many other slices of the population until I learned how to be able to pay attention to communication, how to read people more effectively, how to communicate with intention, and how to pick up on all of the small little nuances that made a difference in the communication outcome. So making no the goal is something that I also advocate for anybody who is hesitant to pitch. The more times you do, the better you're going to get. So the better for you to make no the goal as opposed to only being okay with yes, because no is not going to do anything to hurt you. It's going to give you an opportunity to go through the pitching process and be able to hear the reasoning, perhaps, if you're lucky, that someone says no, but also to build a relationship with the fact that no is not the end all. It's not the worst outcome. It's simply a no. And then learn the intelligence behind the reasons why people say no. It's very, very basic. They're summarized here. People say no to you if they don't like you. They say no to you if they don't believe you or if they don't believe in you. If they don't value what you offer, if they believe it won't work for them, or if they can't afford it. And if we had to generalize, these are the big general reasons why people will say no. So a lot of these you have influence over, and you can influence your outcome by having influence over the ones you can, and then not be offended by the ones that you have no influence over. No matter what you did, it was still going to be a no, and no is an acceptable outcome from any negotiation. It's not a reason not to jump in and negotiate. So now we're going to talk about some of the skills that are going to have an impact on the outcome of your sales conversations. And these may seem fairly basic, and they are, they are communication specific nuances that some of us do learn intentionally, and some of us simply learn from parroting other people or as an association of the way that we got raised. Some of them are conditions based upon our backgrounds, the ways that our family has communicated, the communication rules that were put in place for us as we were raised. All of those things have an impact. The goal is to learn how to be somebody who is able to communicate intentionally and assertively without being aggressive or offensive, and to find the middle line. You know, I had a big struggle with learning how to be an assertive communicator. I was taught to, be nice and be kind and be pleasant. And, my parents are fabulous. But I was definitely taught to be much more accommodating and to not be aggressive in any way. As an adult, that's part of being able to communicate and negotiate and not be somebody who gets stepped on. And it was something that I struggled to learn how to do. And so breaking it down into some of these small components was something that helps when I was learning how to do them. So number one on the list is tone. And until you tune into the way that you tone how you speak, it may be something that you don't have sight into that is impacting the outcome of your communication. So to use an example, this is an example that I got taught when I was 19 and learning sales, but I'm going to say a sentence 7 different times, and it's going to have 7 slightly different meanings based upon which word I decide to put a different inflection on. So the sentence is, I didn't say you had an attitude problem. I didn't say you had an attitude problem. It insinuates somebody else did. I didn't say you had an attitude problem, but I think it. I didn't say you had an attitude problem. I think your brother does, or whoever. I didn't say you had an attitude problem. That means I think you still have it. I didn't say you had an attitude problem. That means you got another kind of problem. I didn't say you had an attitude problem, but I think you have an attitude. And so again, it's a silly sentence, but I use it because for every different word that you choose to emphasize, it completely changes the impression and the reception of what you've said to someone. It can be offensive. It can be, destructive in a relationship. It can certainly be like a terrorist in a communication when it comes to a business transaction. So having influence over your tone with purpose is something to focus on and work on. Attitude, I think that we barely covered, but it's a very light point, that the way that you're thinking when you're speaking and you're communicating is going to be conveyed to people energetically. And so if you're nervous at all, people are going to feel that you're nervous. Sometimes you're going to be lucky and you're going to have an audience that's going to want to make you feel better and help put you at ease. But oftentimes that's not going to be the case. And demonstrating your nerves is going to be a way to have people assume that perhaps you may not feel sure, and it's going to make them feel unsure as well. And they're going to be able to feel that. So the attitude that you show up with, whether you are showing up and you are at a lower level of enthusiasm than the people that you're walking into a pitch with, if you are at a distracted place or you're frustrated, they can energetically sense that. And I don't advocate for walking in the room like you're bouncing off the walls at all. but I do know that when you walk in the room, if your energy level and your attitude is slightly higher than the people that you are walking in to see, that's something that they're going to notice. And if they are tuned into being able to see who feels really confident, and in many cases, people that are extremely successful in business are successful because they're also very successful with people, which means that they have sight into these type of nuances. They're going to notice that you are aware enough and that you carry yourself enough at an attitude that does show that you're confident and that you are certain and that you are not diminishing the room by being at a lower level energetically than the people you're speaking to. The pace at which you choose to speak is also something to be aware of, and it's something to pay attention to mostly if you speak too quickly. There are, sometimes teachings that say that if you speak very quickly, it's a sign of intelligence. One of the most important keys to gauge when you start into a pitch or a negotiation with someone, I always like to begin, for sure, by asking a couple of questions and banter back and forth. And the reason I do that is, yes, to have a nice introduction, but the second component is so that I can listen to how quickly they speak. The biggest way to understand at what pace you should speak is to hear how quickly someone else is speaking, because how quickly they're speaking is at the speed that they also prefer to be listening as well. And so you should match your pace with where they are. You can speed up as you go and you keep their attention with you if you want to get into more detail and you'd like to cover more in a quicker pace. You just have to go and get them first and then bring them to that pace. And the same thing is true if they're very quick. If you walk in and they're very quick and they're like, yep, let's get started. Okay, let's go. Then I'm going to start off very quickly. Hi, I'm Michelle. This is my company. This is the solution. Da 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 da. And then I'm going to gradually slow them down if I want to be at a slower pace so that I don't feel rushed. It's just something that we need to start where they want to start, and then I can take them where I want to get to. And you do that by paying attention and by listening. And that way there's no miss in the communication. Listening skills, focus, and presence is something I think that is also very underrated, particularly when it comes to, having to multitask and manage multiple things at once. When you're in a negotiation or a conversation with someone, it's very important that they feel that you're present. They feel that you're not looking distracted because you're not distracted. So it's not about acting. It's about absolutely turning everything else off and practicing being exactly in the one conversation and paying attention to the words that are being said, listening without distraction, not listening to figure out what you should say next, not trying to figure out what's going to be the smartest thing that's going to get them excited, not anticipating telling them something that it's going to make them laugh. It's about putting all of that to the side and really being focused and present. The reason it's so valuable is that it's a rare experience. And we notice when we are in an experience with someone and they're being present with us. We notice when we can really feel heard and we feel as though we have commanded their attention. And in some way that feels like a form of payment, which it builds trust in our relationship. And building trust in our relationship is something that is incredibly important when you're looking to expand your customer base or access new investors in your business. One of the easiest ways to do that is with your listening skills, with your presence, and with your focus on the conversation. The words that we choose, we referenced this again at the very beginning. And so there's a list at the beginning of minimizing words to not particularly use, but it's just good as a generalization to make sure that the words that you're choosing to use are accurate for the audience that you're addressing. Sometimes people will use words that are over the head of everybody who's listening. If you say that you're a fintech company, a financial technology company, and you're looking to speak to your investors and the investors are not from that background, then the words that you choose should be at a layman's terms so that you're not speaking over people's heads. You need to not use industry words that you're going to have to explain or that are going to miss the mark when it comes to connecting from to a normal person. Make sure that you're not using words for the purpose of either being too impressive or making yourself sound smart, not to accuse anyone of doing that, but have it on your radar that that's a possibility. People won't make a decision if they're not clear. If they don't have complete clarity, they're going to say no. And that's a fact in any type of business negotiation. So ensure that the words that you use are words that are going to be understandable. So not too industry specific. If you need to use some, fine, but then explain them. And ensure that the words that you choose as well are words that are accurate for the audience that you have and that are accurate for the industry that you want to represent. So if it's if you're opening a circus, you're going to use words that are much more colorful and vibrant, because this is helping to paint the picture and the story for what it is that you do. If you're developing a software product that is going to resolve issues that are very technical, you won't use those same colorful words because they're going to be off-brand. So again, just being aware of the words that you choose and their impact is something that's going to help have your message be received properly in the intangible ways that impact communication. Now, and body language, this is one that is, incredibly important. And so body language is important not only in the way that it demonstrates the way that you express yourself, but there are a couple of small things with body language that can either kill your chances of success or really set you up to have a much larger chance of success. And so there is an exercise that is taught down at Stanford University, and it's an exercise called Take Up More Space. Many of you may already be aware of this. It's one of the most powerful exercises that I have ever found. We use it constantly, and we have, for the past 20 something years. And it's just about the way that you're posturing yourself. And so often, again, you'll see people, and women tend to minimize the amount of room that they're taking up in a room, and men tend to take up a little bit more. But I don't believe any of us actually uses the take up more space to its potential. And so truly what it means, if you're sitting down and you're sitting in a chair, then it means to sit back in your chair and to move your shoulders back so that your collarbone is a little bit more pronounced. It's to have your knees at shoulder width apart where you're sitting so that your feet are even taking up a little more space. And then the last component is to lift up your chin. So you're not looking down your nose at anyone. That's not the point, but it's simply to take up a little bit more room. The combination of those different activities in your body, those posture movements combined together, they send a shot, I think it's of epinephrine, from your limbic system to your prefrontal cortex. You actually get an adrenaline lift. Your body chemically responds to that posture and says something important's happening. Oh, we should pay attention. And so by physically doing that and taking that posture, you are chemically influencing yourself to be in a better frame of mind. You're giving yourself the feel good hormone so that your body chemically feels differently. You've seen it on Grey's Anatomy is fantastic. Shonda Rhimes has written this into her scripts, where before they go into the operating room, they do that from a standing posture, and you can do it from a standing posture. You stand kind of like Superman with your feet shoulder width apart, your hands on your hips and your shoulders back and your chin up. And I personally like to imagine a cape flying behind me when I do it. But we would do this before we walked into a pitch, and it would change the way that we would feel, because we would feel all of those adrenaline, the epinephrine, giving us that little bit of a lift, and it makes a massive difference. That changes the way that you posture when you are in front of someone, and it allows you to feel a lot more natural about feeling that you have influence over your outcome because your body is telling you that you're about to do something important. The other thing worth noting is that the complete opposite is true as well. And so unfortunately today, we spend a lot of our time working on computers or devices, and we do that while we're sitting at a desk, and so do, everyone's children. And consider the posture for a second that we are in when we do that. It's the opposite of the one we just described. And so when you're working at your desk, often your shoulders are a little bit curved in, your feet are together or your knees are crossed, so your legs are not shoulder width apart, and your chin is down because you're looking at your keyboard or you're looking at your screen, which is generally lower than where you are in most cases. The combination of those three different muscular changes, it sends a shot of cortisol from your limbic system to your prefrontal cortex, which is the stress hormone. Your body naturally sends a stressful hormone, and it says we should worry about something. Something might not be going right. And that can have a massive impact on how we're feeling, the expectation of success about our pitch that we're going to do tomorrow night, the outcome of our business, etc. So all of these things have a massive impact when it comes to when you walk into a room or you're doing a presentation and you're speaking to somebody over the computer. If your body is posturing in that way, you're setting yourself up to have a way more challenging communication session simply because of that one fact alone. So if you ever find yourself thinking anything discouraging, immediately check your posture, sit back, put your shoulders back in your chair, tilt up your chin for a second, let the hormones kick in, and then take another look at what it is you're doing. It's incredible. It's incredibly powerful how important body language happens to be. And the take up more space is one of the most powerful tools that we've ever discovered to get an injection of confidence before when you want it. It's to simply employ that exercise and do it whenever you need it. Comfort zones are also important when it comes to an in-person communication. The reason they're on this list is because where we get them wrong is when we violate someone's comfort zone. And so if you've ever been out at a cocktail party or you've been out and meeting someone for the first time and they are someone who stands too close to you, you immediately shut off thinking, and what pops into your mind is, oh my gosh, get away from me, right? That's something that occurs. It's like a panic that shows up when we violate someone's comfort zone. And we all have different distances of what we, believe to be acceptable, and different types of comfort zones for different people in our lives. There's an intimate comfort zone, there is a family comfort zone, then there's a social comfort zone, and then there's everybody else. We don't know what anyone's comfort zone is, and they're vastly different based upon a tremendous amount of factors, based upon upbringing, your family, the way that you communicate, culturally, which country you live in, the situation. Like, there's so many factors. And so the most important thing with comfort zone is to simply not violate someone's. It's to stay far away. And then the other interesting thing about comfort zones that we learned and then employ is that it's a really easy way to gauge if someone's interested. And by being involved in a negotiation, if you're standing up, being involved in a negotiation, and when someone's starting to be more interested, they generally will take a little step forward towards you. If you're showing them something or you're talking about something, stepping forward is a way for them to get more engaged. When that happens, what's important is to not stay that close. So not immediately, because you don't want to look like a crazy person, but when it's comfortable and acceptable to answer the question, but then also just take that little step back that's almost unnoticeable, so that again, you're getting to the barrier of their comfort zone, and continue to stay in the discussion. And then maybe even, another very tiny little slight, unnoticeable, but step backwards and wait to see if they advance, because they will advance if they're still interested. And it's a really great way to gauge the way the communication is going. You can also, of course, sabotage it by having the opposite effect. When you are too close to someone, you're going to push them right out of their, their zone, and they're no longer interested. And this can show up in boardroom scenarios. It can show up in pitches. It can show up in any circumstances. So again, pay attention to comfort zones and make sure that you can use them to your benefit, not your detriment. Correspondence is on this list because part of the way that we are going to succeed at our follow-ups and with pitches is the way that we email. And one big rule when it comes to email is to try to keep your emails as short as possible. We can mess up our emails by being way too long, being way too descriptive. And we employ a rule with my team that it's a 3-sentence maximum email commitment. And that's what we attempt to stick to all the time, unless it is an update and it's requiring a lot of information. If it is something that is, something that needs to be posted, or it's a specific request, again, that is calling for a very comprehensive response. The way that we communicate shows respect to each other. It makes us force the training of being direct and eliminating any unnecessary words, which respects the other person's time. It also means that we eliminate anything about how we feel or what we're considering, or any of the non-necessities, and it allows us to be much more efficient. And the same is true when you're communicating with prospective customers as well as potential investors. And that ties into the last point on the sheet, which is to be direct. KISS stands for keep it short and simple, and be direct in the way that you communicate. Men are more trained to be direct traditionally than women are. Generalization, women are more indirect in their communication. Just as an example, if you recall the last time that you were driving in a car and it's a girl and a guy, and let's say the guy's driving and the woman is in the driver's seat, and say that she's thirsty. So she waits, and then all of a sudden you're on the highway and here comes a sign, and you have been on the highway with no, places to stop for over an hour. And she looks up and she says, "Are you thirsty?" And he says, "No." And he passes the exit. And now she's furious, and he is mystified as to why. And that's because women generally communicate as indirect communicators. So understanding that will also help to interpret if you're communicating with the opposite gender. Women, of course, speak women. So if that was 2 women in the car, the woman would say, "Hey, are you thirsty?" And the other woman would immediately start to turn over and be like, "No, I'm not, but maybe, are you? Should we stop?" And she'll immediately accommodate. And the same is true if it was 2 men. Most men, if it was 2 men, would simply be extremely direct. "Oh, stop," or "pull over," or, "let's get some food." So those are kind of the generalizations. I know that we are now at time. And so I appreciate everybody for being on. I hope it was valuable, and I'm happy to stay on and answer some questions. And of course, we will flip you the slide deck so that you have access to everything that we covered this evening.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Wondering if there are any questions, please do type them in the chat. You can also use the reactions button at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to unmute and ask a question. I know there's some wonderful comments in the chat here about the presentation, all the information that you shared, Michelle. So much valuable information. I know doing a pitch is not easy, especially for different personality types, those who are not comfortable speaking and doing public speaking. So thank you so much for sharing all of your great tips with everyone. So let's take a look at the chat and see if there are any questions. I see one question from Cindy. What is the best way to practice your pitch?
Well, I don't think that there's a wrong way to practice it. I think that it's important for you to practice it on your own. And so I advise to practice it while you're looking in a mirror, which is in a lot of cases extremely uncomfortable, because you're going to see all the crazy, funny things that your face does. And you're going to be the harshest critic on the way that you're posturing and all of those things. But you don't get to edit those things until you become aware of them. And so practicing your pitch first in the mirror is an incredibly valuable awareness experience. And that's going to allow you to get better with the harshest critic that you have in most cases, which is ourselves. After you've done the practicing in the mirror and you're ready to then practice with other people, I think that it's great to have somebody who's like a colleague that you are equally committed to helping each other out, so that you can get together and you can role play through a presentation. If you don't have someone like that, then I would work to build someone like that in your network where you provide the same type of value for each other. We're working to launch, it's not launched yet, but we're working to launch a new platform which will help to accommodate some of those things. The launch is just going into beta next month, so it is not live. The website is still the website that was there from 4 years ago, but it's called She the Mighty, and it's a place where we would help to facilitate some of those similar things. But again, there's no wrong place to practice your pitch. I would find somebody that is just a customer. I would find somebody who is probably a little bit more articulate, and they're not just going to be agreeable. It's not the best person to practice your pitch with, is not necessarily your mom, who's going to be like, oh, you're so great. That's good, but you really want someone who's also going to be able to ask you challenging questions and help you to improve. And then the last thing I would say about that is, I think that you need to practice until you are so well versed in it and you've kind of created every single scenario. So depending upon which type of question that they're going to ask, you are not scared of being hit with almost anything. I can't reiterate how important I think practicing is. When you watch a baseball game, even the most incredible pitchers, the best on the planet, obviously, that are in the major leagues, they still warm up at the side before they get out onto the mound, because every single pitch while you're in play matters. And the only way for you to have an ace pitch when you're on the mound is to have thrown 100 of them when you're in the practice, and when you're in the whatever the practice pitching lane is, I can't recall at the moment, but you get my point. So again, I think that you should do it an incredible amount of times, and you do it over and over and over and over again. You cannot practice too much.
I see that Tamara has her hand raised. Tamara, do you want to unmute your mic and ask your question?
Yes, just echoing the sentiments of everyone in the chat. Michelle, it was a really great presentation. I've really learned a lot. I just wanted to ask a little bit about market research. We talked about, having access to Google to do research, but sometimes I find it's overwhelming. And I'm just wondering if there are any hacks to get to the detailed information that we saw in some of these pitches, like how did Airbnb know exactly how many subscribers the couch surfing app or platform had? Like, where is there a hack to that, or is it really just combing through, lots of information?
Yeah, I mean, like there's sort of a hack to it, and then the other side is to just, you become more skilled as a researcher, where it's something that you engage in on kind of a regular basis. And if it's a field that your business is involved in, it should become part of your practice. So, whether you schedule 30 minutes a week where you're going to do research in order to figure out what your competition is up to, what does other offers in your industry look like, what else can you learn from what other people are doing, how are they innovating, that's really going to become part of your normal routine. Because the only way for you to stay relevant and to stay, current, is to have that as part of your practice. So I think it's a really smart thing to inject, and then you will become more educated and more versed on what's happening, and the research gets easier as you go. At the beginning, if it's something that you're newly starting, and that's the case for all startups or for entrepreneurs who are opening a new business, then my advice would simply be to Google and then check out all of the links that are on that first page. Just go and check them out, read whatever the article happens to say. Some of them will say competing information. Some of them will say the same thing, just wrapped up in different words. But it's going to give you the impression of what the most, what the most popular opinions are on this keyword search is right now. And that's valuable insight for you to be able to get. You'll become more and more expert at synthesizing that information and being able to pull out what the real needle moving data points are and not get overwhelmed with the volume of data, because it becomes fairly obvious. So it's not that tricky. And then I think that you can hack some of this stuff simply by going to the company's websites. If you're looking for real data on a specific competitor, you can find a lot of that on their website. Today, everybody's interested in publishing what their social credentials look like. So you can see how many views they have in a lot of cases. You can see how many, social following accounts they have as well. Another hack, if they don't publish that, is sometimes you can reach out to that company and let them know that you're interested in potential, potentially advertising with them. Can they send you their media kit? And sometimes they'll send you their media kit and it will have all of that information on it. So, you can get creative in a way that is still, above board. And most of the data that you're looking for is absolutely accessible in less than 30 minutes of searching online.
Thank you so much. And were you still going to share that pitch deck that you use?
Yeah, so the pitch deck site that I use is called SlideBean. Yeah, so it's incredible. I don't have the current pricing for it. It's one of the ones that I bought from AppSumo, but it's super, super easy to navigate. And I think that that's one of the things that, should be on your list, is to hack. Again, I'm not a graphic designer, but I want my information to look appealing and pleasing and not distracting, because it's so awful. And SlideBean has all of these incredible templates that you can just go in and start to pre-fill and play around with a couple of them, and it'll completely get you there faster than trying to create a slide deck all on your own. It also will give you a tremendous amount to model off of and give you some ideas as well. So there's lots of others that are out there. You can find a bunch, and for whichever one is affordable. I don't think this one is very expensive at all. I think it starts out at like $10 a month for students. But again, I can't say enough great things. I think it's a super impressive pitch deck.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it.
Definitely take advantage of all of the resources that you have, because there are so many available to you. I don't feel like you have to be the expert in everything. Next question is from Tatiana. Well, a comment as well. Hi, Michelle. Learned so much from this that I will be putting it into practice. Thank you so much. Oh, you actually read my mind. So you read Tatiana's mind. She just wanted to know your contact information so she would be able to continue the conversation. So thank you for sharing that. Yes,
no problem. You're welcome to email. That's my phone number. I'm a big screener, so email is probably best, so that way I can answer or send specific things if you're looking for resources, etc. But again, I'm super happy to share. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and I've been involved in doing my own tech for probably close to the past 10 years, because I got frustrated with how expensive it was to hire out all of these things out. And so I've created kind of like a hit list of some of the best websites and software components to use as a tech stack that make it seamless for your business. And a lot of them are free, and I'm super happy to share and help. I am here because I'm a massive fan of entrepreneurs, and I know the 75,000 hats you all have to carry and share and wear. And again, I love working with York. I love working with Markham. And I'm excited to see, what else or what I can do in order to help you. I'm totally happy to, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Michelle, do want to thank you again for sharing all of your expertise on pitching and creating that effective pitch, and all of your tips and resources for that. So really do appreciate your time here tonight with everyone. I know I see all of the wonderful comments in the chat regarding your presentation tonight. So do want to thank you for joining us all tonight. And I also want to thank all of our attendees as well for joining us again for Founder Fundamentals. Again, thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you again next week at 6 p.m. Take care, everyone. Bye.